What if a paper on a dusty wall could turn the world's fortunes not by paying interest, but by swapping coins across borders? What if a government-issued bond printed in the glow of 1,000 bank vaults could silently lift a family from a cramped apartment in Bogota and drop a corporation into bankruptcy in Shenzhen, all without a single trade or a trader's finger? And what if the idea lay hidden, in plain sight, waiting for a desperate soul to find it? Maya Reyes stared at the flickering screen of her aging laptop, the blue light reflecting off the rain-streaked window. She was 32, with shoulders that once carried the weight of a marketing firm's expectations, now bowed by the heavy burden of student loans and a rent that would outpace her monthly paycheck. Her apartment was a cramped loft in Queens, the kind of place that smelled of stale coffee and old books. Her life was a loop-wake commute worth pay repeat. There was no room for dreams. The world outside her window seemed to move faster, a river of neon and ambition that she could only watch. On her desk lay a half-finished spreadsheet, numbers scribbled in red to indicate debt. Her eyes were tired, her fingers cramped. In the corner, a tattered magazine lay open to a headline that caught her eye: "The Invisible Bond, the New Frontier of Global Wealth Redistribution." She clicked, and the article unfurled. It described a theoretical instrument, a zero-interest government bond that, paradoxically, would siphon wealth from the affluent and redistribute it to the poor. The headline made her stomach twist, but she kept reading. The article was a blend of financial jargon and speculative theory. It spoke of a bond that could be issued under the guise of a standard security. Yet its true nature lay in the way the government would use it to conduct a covert redistribution of capital. The concept sounded insane, yet the idea of a silent hand lifting the downtrodden intrigued her. Her heart raced. Could such a mechanism exist? Could it be real? She could not ignore the question, what if she could use it to escape her cycle? She saved the article, closed the laptop, and pressed her forehead to the cool glass. The rain hissed on the window like a sigh. Her mind flickered with the possibility that an ordinary bond could change her life. Maya's world was ordinary, unremarkable. She worked at a small ad agency that barely made ends meet. The office hummed with the clatter of keyboards, the hum of fluorescent lights, the occasional sigh of a colleague tired of chasing a client that was more of a nightmare than a project. She dreamed of moving to a place where her children could breathe, where she could finally put down roots. The dream felt more like a mirage, but the article, with its promise of a new way to redistribute wealth, pulled her out of her stupor. She began to search for more information. Her curiosity turned into obsession. She scoured obscure forums, old economic journals that had been digitized decades ago, and forums for financial rebels. In a thread titled "How to Bend the System," a post had mentioned a paper titled "The Invisible Bond." The thread's author had been silent for months. Maya sent a message. "Whoever this is, can you explain how this bond works?" she typed. The reply came 2 days later in a single line. "The code is in the paper. Follow the path, but beware the mirror." Maya felt a chill. She began to dig into the paper's origins. The research cited a forgotten economist, Dr. Elias Hartman, a 1970s scholar who had disappeared after an interview about wealth distribution. Maya found a handwritten copy of Hartman's notes tucked into a public library's archives. The notes were cryptic, but the last page was a diagram of a loop money circulating from one corner of the world to another, silently. She took the notes home and ran her fingers over the diagram. She imagined the world as a giant silent machine with gears turning but unseen. Her pulse quickened. What if the bond was a gear and she had found the key to turn it? She started small. She found a government bond that had been issued in a foreign country, its coupon rate listed at 0.01. The bond was supposed to be a low-risk investment, a way to keep capital safe. But Maya began to notice something else. Every time she purchased the bond, a portion of the purchase was being redirected to a charity that she could not find in any public database. She double-checked the statements, the tax records, the transfer logs. Nothing seemed out of place. The money was there, but it had no label. Her instincts told her she was onto something. She turned to Dr. Elias Hartman, the ghost of a forgotten economist. He had vanished, but his papers had survived. She posted a message on an online forum dedicated to economic anomalies. The message was answered by a user called the Paradox, who claimed to have been in Hartman's inner circle. The Paradox was a reclusive figure, known only by a screen name. He spoke in riddles but gave her a link to a private database, a repository of old financial models that had been buried in the archives of the International Monetary Fund. The database contained the original code for a bond issuer's algorithm. Maya studied it. She traced its logic. The algorithm showed that the bond could be used to create a zero-interest loan that would be credited to the government's treasury, but the capital was then redistributed to a separate account in a low-tax jurisdiction. The money would then be reissued as infrastructure loans in developing nations, effectively redistributing wealth. The paradox was that the bond itself paid no interest, but the redistribution was hidden in its mechanics. Maya tested the theory. She invested $5,000 in a government bond from a small Pacific island nation. The purchase was logged, the money flowed to the government. A few weeks later, her account statement showed a true return. She double-checked. The return was not from the bond's interest. It was from a foreign investment in a small textile company in Bangladesh that had been funded by the redistribution algorithm. Her heart hammered. The bond had worked. She felt as if she had found a secret passage in a labyrinth she had never seen. Her world changed. She no longer needed to chase clients. Her finances improved. The bills she had once feared disappeared into the night. The success came with a cost. As the money began to flow into her account, she noticed that the global stock markets were reacting. In Hong Kong, a sudden surge of liquidity was seen. The local government's bonds dropped in value. The next day, a report appeared in the Financial Times that the world's largest bank had lost a significant portion of its assets to a new redistribution scheme. The headlines were all over the news. People were whispering that the invisible bond was causing a ripple effect. The world's wealthy felt uneasy. The government's legitimacy was being questioned. The moral crisis emerged. Maya felt the weight of her discovery. She was no longer a passive participant. She had a responsibility. She began to fear what her success might do to the fragile balance of global finance. She wondered whether the system was a safety net or a cage. Her dilemma grew. She could use the bond to fund charities, schools, hospitals. She could create a global safety net, or she could keep the knowledge secret, protecting herself from being exploited. But she could not ignore the world's reaction. A shadowy group of financial elites had learned of her experiments. They called themselves the Syndicate. They approached her through an anonymous message. "We know what you've done. Join us or we'll stop you." Maya's fingers shook as she read the message. She felt a wave of fear. The syndicate was powerful. They could blackmail her, threaten her family. She realized that the invisible bond was more than a financial instrument. It was a weapon. She could choose to use it to change society or to preserve the status quo. Her conscience wavered between selfishness and altruism. She met with the paradox again. He urged her to use the bond for the greater good, but warned that the syndicate would fight for control. He said, "The bond is a mirror. If you look in it, you see the world you want to create, but you also see the people who want it to remain the same." Maya decided to act. She wrote a letter to the world. She published her findings on a public forum detailing the algorithm, the redistributive mechanism, and the potential risks. She did not reveal the specifics that would allow the syndicate to replicate it. She only revealed enough to expose the hidden redistribution. The world reacted. Politicians debated the ethics. The syndicate tried to discredit her. The government issued a statement that they were investigating the bond's origins. The public called for a global conversation about wealth distribution. The climax came when Maya was called into a room of high-ranking officials. They offered her a position, a secure job, an envelope of money. The offer was meant to silence her. She declined. She felt a clarity she had never had before. Her eyes were no longer dimmed by fear. In the end, the invisible bond did not solve all the world's problems. It did not erase poverty or eliminate inequality, but it forced the world to confront the truth. Wealth is not a fixed resource, it is a flow, and we are all part of its current. The bond became a mirror, reflecting society's values back to itself. She walked away from the meeting with a sense of purpose. The future was uncertain. The bond was a tool, and its fate rested on how humanity chose to wield it. The world's invisible currents had shifted, but the tide was still in the hands of those who dared to look. As Maya stepped out into the rain-slick streets, she looked up at the sky. The clouds were heavy, and rain fell in a steady rhythm. She wondered whether the invisible bond would be a balm or a blade. The question lingered like a question mark in the dark. The story ended with the world asking, what kind of future do we choose if we can redistribute wealth at will? The answer, she realized, was not about money but about what we do with it.
Found this interesting? Subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like, share it out, and drop your questions or ideas in the comments. Until our next adventure.